entertainment, insights. Don't take life too seriously. Welcome to Brainsky Unleashed. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another spectacular episode of Brainsky Unleashed. Today, we are going to be discussing with Craig Ingram and Troy Aberly, both excellent, awesome friends of mine who are also brilliant in their own right with understanding goals and commercialization and business. And we're going to be going over a bunch of stuff that anyone who's listening can absolutely benefit from, especially in the business world. And when it comes to the words of Troy, if there's goals in mind, he can get you there. So with that, let's go ahead and start the program. Welcome to the program, guys. All right. Troy's excited. I'm excited. Craig is excited. If you look at him, that's what excitement looks like. So it's kind of disappointing, but really he's excited. So here we go. We have three guys coming together, providing a very unique set of insights, guidance, advisory. I don't even know what we're going to call this. For right now, we're going to call it informal inspiration. In the future, we may call it informal perspiration. We don't know. But the point is, we're going to have a conversation tonight, and we're going to come up with stuff that is going to be helpful for other people. And before we jump into this, I want to make sure that everyone kind of understands, why are you even paying attention to what we have to say? Well, number one, we have Troy. Troy understands the human mind so well. He understands what motivates people. He understands goals and understanding and how to get people to go outside of their norms. And then you have Craig. Craig is a guy who fully grasps marketing, commercialization, business management, growth, everything that goes into that. There's 10 pillars. Me, I'm an operator. I just get things. You tell me there's a problem, I'm going to find a solution. And you put the three of us together and you have something magical. And so that's why we decided to do this. All right. So with that, I'm going to open up with Troy. Troy, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
I appreciate that, Thomas, and having you and Craig on this introductory call to me is just so powerful, because I realize how many businesses today are actually faced with some really big problems. You take a look at executive C-suites, CEOs. Depending on the report you look at, we're north of 80%. It's actually around almost 90 for some reports of percentages of people who actually don't feel inspired to be at work. They're burnt out. They're overwhelmed. And what's even crazier is if you study the staff that are being led by them, there's like 75% of those people feel burnt out. So when you actually drive down the main street of any business or any city in America or in Canada where I am, think about that. Most of the people don't want to be there, or they feel overwhelmed and stressed, and there's problems. And so, when Craig and yourself reached out and we started talking about these really big problems, Thomas, we understood that there was some 5 really big key things that were going on for people. And I can walk through that and talk through that, but we know that there's a major problem. And so for people who are listening today, just know that there are challenges that are going on in the economy. Yes, but that's having an impact at home. It's having an impact in the way you see yourself in the mirror, but it's also the way that your staff and team see you. And thus it's changing the confidence in the customer.
Before you continue on to anything else, I think it's worth noting that most people who may be listening to this, and Craig's talked about this, he brought it up on LinkedIn, and I think he's absolutely right. Most people who are in these positions actually don't necessarily even recognize that they have a problem. And to me, that's astonishing. Why they don't know. And Craig, you identified it. So I'm gonna kind of loop you in here. What is it that, if you're a C-suite guy and you think everything's going great, you're hitting your numbers, company's running well, yet you don't recognize that you have problems. Why is that?
Commercialization is really the most important thing of a company, right? Whether the product has been developed yet, or whether the product has been developed and either has been launched or needs to be launched. If there is a problem with the 10 support beams that holds up the bridge of commercialization from ineffective or moderately effective, trying to get to, extremely effective, there's a breakdown. And I find it's like, where's Waldo, right? And yeah, I try to laugh at that, because I'm thinking even right now, when my kids were little, they love trying to find where's Waldo, but that's what it's like trying to find what is hidden in business to make it effective, right? And so, in my opinion, in what I've seen in companies that I've personally worked for and companies that I've been able to consult with and help out, you have to uncover what is hidden. And if you're in a forest, and every one of us is in a forest, right? When we're at the ground level, we can only see trees. But even if we were to get in a helicopter and look at the whole forest, we're still going to identify specific trees. This is why we need people from the outside that don't carry baggage of that specific sector or industry or whatever to be able to come in and to be able to look at the whole forest and say, well, this is the problem that's going on in your business. That's going to affect you at home. Whatever is affecting you at home is going to affect you in business. And I think Troy nailed it, right? And when it comes to operations, this is where you're so effective, Tom. Where if business was so awesome, then 61.3% of companies, number one, wouldn't be missing their annual fiscal year forecast or quota. So the overwhelming vast majority of companies are not even hitting their annual numbers. So that means the reps aren't hitting their territory numbers. The regional directors aren't hitting their regional numbers. And it goes up the chain. It's a serious problem, right? And you get people like some of the business coaches that we've actually paid for in the past, specifically in the private equity world, where 93.4% of companies that are registered, at least in the US, from a LLC, S Corp, or C Corp, yeah, they're not even hitting $1 million in revenue in a fiscal year, in a 12-month period. So if they're not hitting it, 93.4% of companies aren't hitting 1 million, they're sure the hell ain't hitting 10 million. And that's even more rare.
Craig, you bring
So
up something really interesting that I want to run by Thomas because I want to get your take. Thomas, when you guys were asking, when we were talking about what are some of the things, the framework that a business could start looking at, just the high level. It's crazy how many people that we realized in C suites don't actually know their goals. Now, when I say that, they have a goal internalized in their own self, but they don't know where they're going personally for their own life, where they're taking the company. It doesn't always, these goals don't always align with the rest of the company. And the community now has become kind of aimless. That person has an idea where they want to go, he or she as a leader, but their staff and their customers and everyone else doesn't seem to know that. And I found that really interesting to look at that is if you're a company, if you're someone who's 45 to 55 years old, you're running a company that's $10 million and above, maybe 10 to $30 million, and you don't really have really clear direction of exactly what should the outcome be or could be, you're not going to know what the market even capability even is. You're just coasting. And then number two was, do you actually have an ideal client? Because if you have a product or service that doesn't really align with a true dream client that you could be working with, and that you don't know enough about those people, you don't have that attached to that goal, you're going to have some chemistry that's missing. And there's challenges that we can get into after that deal with that. Then number three was, what is a way that you're actually grabbing the attention and educating clients on what that product or service is? How does that relate to things that are challenging them in their lives so that they can actually understand, I didn't even know I needed it, open up their perception. And then what is the buying criteria to putting that together? And then of course, as then we start to look at, then, how do you put commercialization into those pieces so that you can actually educate people on that? And I think then also, what is the sales process of your company? So you have this, now you've identified that you do have goals, you do have the right clients, you have the right products and services to help them. What is the way that, yes, that you're educating, but how are you deploying that message so that you're not just saying and spraying it across the economy? So I think when people can realize that they can have a lot more result of doing things effectively and tactfully, the result is that much better there. What do you think of that, Thomas? Because you're somebody who seems to be able to compartmentalize that a lot better than most people that I know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to tell you what I ran into recently, right? So, you guys have both covered a lot of broad things, and there's only so much that we're going to really be able to cover, in one session. But I'm going to give you guys an example of something that I came across recently, and to me, this is a failure at the goal level, and it is a failure at the commercialization level, and it's a failure in so many ways, and it's something that's preventable, right? So I'm going to give you a scenario that really happened. It's a real thing. And then I want to just give each of you, I'm going to start with Troy and then move to Craig. And I just want to give each of you an opportunity to kind of give your thoughts, maybe, a minute or two of your thoughts as to, how toxic, as well as what could be done to resolve it or what could have been done to prevent it. So here's a scenario. There is an airline that I'm aware of. The airline it's been around for a few years. It's not an extremely old airline. It's a fairly new airline, and they started out doing scheduled operations. Okay, so this is when they're gonna fly anyone who buys a ticket from point A to point B. And then I guess a couple of years ago they broke into charter operations as well, and so now they're selling charter. And they had a situation where a senior vice president of the company told his team, okay, the people that were under him, that he didn't really care about charter. And so that wasn't important to him. Now, I can tell you what my thoughts are and how that would affect and what kind of impact that would be and how I would resolve it. But I want to start with you, Troy. If that was something that came to light, all right. So you're working with the CEO of an airline, and something like this comes to light. What do you think first?
I think of a communication breakdown. Where did this communication break down from where it started internally and then moved to external? Because something is very, very unaligned, and there's an opportunity about to become very missed. Because if I'm hearing about it now, it's probably been going on for quite some time. And we got to a place here now where things become a delusion.
Yeah. Um, Craig, what are your thoughts? And then I'll kind of wrap this one up.
In my opinion, the senior VP really put a foot in the mouth, because if it's not important to them at that level, it's not going to be important to the people underneath. And if it's a revenue generating vertical, it should be important. Business is a game, and the way that the score is kept is revenue, market share, and EBITDA. Bottom line. If it's not, then those people should go join the Peace Corps and work for peanuts, because you're going to do a really good charity. You're going to do really good human charity to people, but you're not going to make money. So if you're in business and you're not in business to make money, and you're not in business to make money the right way, the ethical way, the way that you're not putting someone in due harm, either financially, physically, or emotionally, then it's your job to lead. I heard Simon Sinek today, about 2 hours ago, say leaders are to take care of those in your care. Or another way to say it is, leadership is to take care of those that are in your charge.
Okay. So I'm gonna give you my take on it. From the perspective of if I was being paid by the CEO of a company to help them, the first thing I would say is I'd want to know where who heard it. Did it come from HR? How did this come to light? And if it didn't come to light, except maybe an employee brings it to light, why wasn't it addressed sooner? When did this come to light? That's an important thing, because if we can find out how slow communication is moving, or how long it takes for communication to get somewhere to resolve a problem, then that's something that needs to be looked at. Personally, I would have the guy fired. You see, Troy, the CEO of the company should at least be talking about the goals and making sure that everyone in the company is aligned with the goals. I mean,
Mhm.
that goes without saying. And so if they are doing charter in the first place, then that is a goal of the company. And how dare a vice president, an executive vice president, tell anyone on his team that he doesn't care? I'm sorry, that person needs to be removed immediately, right? And then you need to address
Absolutely.
it again from the top down. Work with the goals. Everyone needs to understand the goals. Craig, you're absolutely right. You can't be in a position where you behave in a way that does this because it does have a negative impact, right? And it does affect EBITDA. The fact of the matter is, this charter stuff, whether you like it or not, brings in revenue. And if it's bringing in revenue, you don't you don't walk away from it. You don't poo-poo it. You look at it, and then you try and eke out as much of a profit as possible. Now, if this doesn't bring in any profit whatsoever, then you certainly would never discuss this to a bunch of, people who are under you and say, "We're gonna totally ignore this." That's obviously not the right way to go. It would be an up channel thing. So again, I would absolutely try and fire this person. They certainly don't belong with an organization because of a horrible attitude. And so that's just kind of my take on it. But I just want to wrap this up by saying that this, unfortunately, is not uncommon, and
No, it's everywhere.
it's everywhere, and that's the important part.
Every
So with
industry.
that, Troy, go ahead.
Well, it's just, it brings me back to something I said earlier is, are your goals your own? Is it your own initiative? Is it your own agenda? I mean, I could talk about this like a government or a business. My question is it has the community already been sent to direction, or they had come up with a direction together? And what is the procedures to challenging out the decision? Because, this could be a completely different conversation if this vice president would have said, looking at things over, I want to change the perception and open up a new conversation to see, is this where we really should still keep going? I mean, let's be honest, there's companies such as Kodak, Sears, or, whomever that should have maybe had some of these conversations too, but rather than it just be dictated as a regime, but opened up in a way that can actually be nurturing and allow people to have information given to them and then all received, but then also retransmitted with the right message that's still collaborative and making people feel important and making people feel secure, because it's when we remove these emotional needs from people that subconsciously we create chaos. And so that one little comment could turn into mountains of heartache
Oh,
internally and externally.
for sure. You know, number 1, I agree with that completely. Number 2, I still would, eliminate that person as a vice president because of
Yes.
that kind of behavior. That cannot last. I'm sorry. But you can replace them. Now that said, from a systematic standpoint, Craig, if that would have happened, would it not be wise to not only remove the person and replace the person, look at the hiring process for these positions, but at the same time also incorporate into the onboarding process, expanding on goals for everyone who comes into the company to recognize the direction it's going? Craig, your thoughts?
People need to know the why. Whether people agree with it or not, if you know the why of something, whether you agree with it or not, you either can be on board or you can leave. But by knowing the why, and if people still choose to stay on board, then they're gonna own a portion of it that is congruent to their level of responsibility. And in my opinion, I think the hiring process has too much nonsense in it, to be quite frank. Um, I don't think we need 6, 7, 8, 9 interviews, number one, because we're not there to hire a friend. We're there to hire people that can get the job done with joy. Even if it's a tough day, they can still have joy. They may not be happy, but they can still be like, I love working here. It's just a really tough day or week or whatever, right? and competency. There's too many companies that are hiring their friends because of politics, friendships, and just the wrong reasons to bring somebody in. And so there's a major breakdown in hiring, in my opinion. And I find that in the corporate world, there's a lot of people that are in positions of authority, but they're not leaders.
Exactly.
And
They're
just because
dictators.
they're in authority, right? And just because they're in a level of a position of authority doesn't mean they exude leadership onto their pores. And I think that's a problem because leadership doesn't equate to authority.
Troy, why do you think that they are dictators versus leaders?
You know, it was something that I do for all of my clients now today is I ask them to put out a job posting or a career opportunity that allows the person to apply using video or to build a presentation because I actually want to know if there's a perception of the person that I'm not aware of. That's really what I'm actually trying to do. I don't care if they're good at Zoom or any of that. What I want to know is if I give them my website or my challenge and I ask them to tell me what they can see, then to me I'm leading them to say, tell me what it is you see as here's our goal. Can I lead you in encouraging you to tell me what you could do for our company and our team? And what you could bring to the table of being resourceful versus if I simply say to them, here's the job. It's 80 hours every 2 weeks. Here's the results I need. And if you don't do it, you're going to get written up. And here's the discipline. You won't be here anymore. To me, that's a dictator. And to me, that's why corporate America, if you will, kind of gotten this bad taste is because people showed up and were given specific directions and that's it. I think we need to do more things as to learning how to evolve, how to be open to how other people see it, and then compiling all of this information and data and seeing how that's actually going to affect our team versus just try this for 5 years during my term that I'm here as this person. To me, that's where I'm dictating. And I only can see it from my perception.
Okay.
So, in other words, just let them work, let them make some mistakes, come alongside of them.
Yeah.
And instead of booting them out right away, maybe find out why they said what they said. Right. And right. And I'm not saying in this specific example with that airline, no, the person needs to be gone from that role. Maybe they stay in the company, maybe they need to go to a different company, but at the end of the day, that role is
No,
not
that's
for them.
no.
They have too
Craig, I would
much.
argue that person needs to go. That kind of attitude, who would actually take the direction of a company and just try and blow it off because they don't like it, does not belong there. Period. End of story.
I totally respect that. And that's what I said. Depending on the situation, maybe they stay, maybe they go. But at the end of the day, they are not qualified for that role because they do not have situation.
I like what Thomas said, though, and I like what you're saying. And to me, it brings up a good question. Anybody who's listening, what is the temperature that you're willing to play in? What's that differentiator or differential, if you will, of where things go? What's the knowing and doing gap? Where is that going to happen? When do you take action? What are the boundaries? Where can we be open-minded? But where do we also say the line is here and it's been crossed? Here is the non-negotiable outcome. Because what we're willing to tolerate internally is what we're going to be willing to tolerate for everything else that we do. And that's what's going to set the example and the tone that's either going to empower or defeat the employee, which then is going to have an impact on the customer.
You know, the great news for everyone listening is that to find those definitions, it's people like us that can help you do that, walk you through that, help define those roles. Most of the time, people, when they are in their jobs, they are doing their jobs. Their heads are down. And that goes back to this analogy of the forest and the trees. And to be able to have people kind of come alongside you and help you see things differently uh, as problems come up, do it from a vantage point that is unbiased because they're not there with you doing every single test that you have to do every day. They're distant from that and have the ability to help you as those things happen. So we're going to wrap this up today. I thank everyone for joining us. I'm going to give each of us an opportunity to plug our own respective shows. I can tell the audience this particular recording. If you're listening to it, maybe you're listening to it on Brainsky Unleashed, and I thank you again for listening. Brainsky Unleashed. That's a 5-star review, no less than 5 stars allowed. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit that little thumbs up, and subscribe. Craig, go ahead and plug your program.
Sure. So I run a podcast called Raw Lessons Revealed. I've had a billionaire, I've had 9-figure people, and I've had 8-figure people, and I've had highly driven people that are trying to get to those levels. And it's one of the fastest growing podcasts right now in business and entrepreneurship. And I just released today, April 22nd, 2024, on LinkedIn. You can download a free resource. It's a 4-page resource that will help you uncover what is hidden in your commercialization process. And it is called The Bridge on It. Works for any company, any industry, but specifically, I developed it for the healthcare technology industry, anywhere from pharmaceutical to medical device to biotechnology to telemedicine, anything in between, including software as a service. So we look forward to seeing you again. And we hope we bring a lot of value that makes you think, be challenged, and be
All right,
encouraged.
Troy, you are up, my man. Wrap it up for us, and I'll sign us off.
I don't have a podcast, Mr. Thomas.
But how do they find you?
Go to Coach
Troy?
Yeah.
There it is, coachtroy.ca. That's coachtroy.ca, coachtroy.ca. Now, great news for everyone. I'm going to announce this to the world. All right, so if you've been listening this long, you could hear
I'm
this.
getting
and as a matter
nervous
of
now,
fact-
Thomas.
As a matter of fact, I'm gonna go ahead and announce this. All 3 of us are going to be providing coaching services. They're going to show up on a webinar near you, and we're going to actually help you on a scheduled basis through some of the things that you are struggling with. I mean, how cool is that? So, more information to come on that in the future.
And don't forget, if you consider yourself a business professional and a professional sports athlete considers them a professional athlete, they get coaching. Why would you, as a business professional, not get coaching? If they're not too good, neither are you, because we all need to be coached on how to do things more effectively.
Thank you all again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.